Yo, welcome to the channel. It's your boy Skater V and happy May the 4th. As today we got a special video as we're gonna do a review on Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Or is it Jedi Survivor? Jedi Survivor? Well, let's go! You'll play as Cal Kestis, a Jedi who's on the run by the evil Galactic Empire. Without spoiling much of the story, it's an action-adventure title with platforming elements as you'll run on walls and jump across massive obstacles, and even engage in some awesome set pieces. And it's all set in the Star Wars universe while still being its own original story. Now, this is also the sequel to the highly praised Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which I highly recommend playing before hopping onto this one if you want to feel the full impact of its story, gameplay, and combat system. Now, this game has a lot to live up to because Fallen Order established a lot of new things to the canon that a lot of Star Wars fans were actually really about with. The whole thing with the Zephos, going back to the prequels and still establishing a couple of things in between that were new and original, and still going back to the old classic movies was great. So with Jedi Survivor, fans are hoping that they continue with what they established and build and grow upon with the new powers of the next-gen consoles. But were they able to do it? Now, it's fair to have your opinions on the first game, but I think we can all admit that the combat was very solid and had a great foundation for something to build upon. And with this whole Souls-like aesthetic, I was only expecting them with, new games like Elden Ring and a bunch of other titles coming out, that this could be something even grander. Now, this little ghosting thing effect that you're seeing, no, this is an edit. This is the main game, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I really wanted them to really go full out with the combat. Action set pieces, moves, quick time events. But is any of that here? Well, for me, I felt yes and no. While the combat almost feels exactly the same, a lot of things don't feel as refined and, I will say, as like the first game. Let me explain. So I kind of noticed that the AI was just a little bit quicker and more aggressive than in the first game. But there doesn't seem to be any organization or actual pattern to the enemies. See, most games will have enemies placed in certain areas to give you different combat scenarios to try out the different mechanics in the game. While with this one, it kind of feels that the AI is just trying to attack you just for the sake of being, the bad guys. And while it isn't that it's not as like the last game with different heavy and, attack moves from the enemies, it's just that they're not really doing anything to really have you engage in certain powers or anything. Other than dodging certain moves and, making sure that you can block certain attacks, you're not really being challenged on using your first powers or any of the weapons that you're given. And the inconsistent frame rate really hurts when trying to establish on what enemy is doing, and even you as a player on trying to engage with them too. Now, this only gets worse as you increase the difficulty, so I went and bumped it down to Padawan mode, and I noticed that the frame rate was super consistent and the enemies were performing just like the original game and still provided a great challenge. Now, this has been all over the marketing, but now in this game we got a whole new set of lightsabers and weapons that we can use. We got the crossguard that looks just like Kylo Ren's that you can do heavy attacks with, and you even get a pistol so you can change the entire gaming setup to play just like Bloodborne. You even get to dual wield that you get in the very beginning, but you can't just switch to different weapons on the fly. You have to go to a save point or a workbench to change your stance. Now, I don't know why they're called stance, they're basically weapon loadouts, but yeah, basically you have 2 layouts that you can have, and you can switch it out left and right, and you have 5 different weapons. Now, I don't really understand the perk meter system because I don't really think they mean anything, but they all do have their pros and cons. Other than that, engaging in the combat is super fun, and when the game is running well and fully optimized, it's firing in every cylinder. All the awesome Jedi powers like Force Pull and Push are all here, and you can use it in combat. Now there are a couple new move sets, but you're only going to be able to see them if you allocate enough skill points to that certain skill tree. So if you really want to see everything, you're basically going to have to play a couple times. But other than that, when you have a full power cow, the game is extremely awesome and fun, and I just find it that it's very unfortunate that a lot of players aren't going to be able to see the full move set, because, you know, unless you really put a lot of play time and hours into this game, you're really not going to be able to see the entire set. So that's a little bit sad, but other than that, I like everything that's here. Now let's talk about that skill tree. Now you have 3 different sections for Survivor, your weapons, the lightsabers, and your force powers. So with Survivor, I definitely recommend just putting everything on it first. Basically, that's going to increase your life and basically all your health and all that good stuff. And then go to the Force powers. You do have Confusion, which is basically that Jedi mind control. I didn't really use it, but hey, some players that might be something, but I don't recommend, you know, putting into it. The other 2 is just, you know, increasing your Force powers and abilities, and then your Force meter, which I think those are 2 very, you know, essential things that you have, that maybe that could have been put for, you know, perks and other things, because while all the weapon things are really awesome, you're not really going to engage on all of them, because again, like I said, just playing the full game, you're probably only going to get around 40 to 50, 60 skill points, and that can only really give you around maybe 4 or 5 full skill trees. So, you know, this isn't an RPG by any extent. And while you can reset your, you know, skill tree, I did notice that when I did that, my powers and you know, strength wasn't changed at all. If you see up, my meter is going increasingly, and it's not like I'm doing any less, you know, power or anything to the enemies. Even to the big people, I've kind of noticed that, yeah, Cal is basically the same from beginning to end. Now, it's basically just increasing how many powers and movesets that you get, which I don't know. I don't like what modern games are kind of doing with this, of saying that a game is a RPG when it's really just hiding back certain elements to just make the player, you know, play and add more time to their, you know, run. Because it's not like everyone's going to have a special build or different stats. As long as you basically engaged with the skill tree until the very end, then at a certain point, you're just basically going to cap all the enemies. So there's no point in just engaging past that. And they easily could have replaced a weapon to just add more to either the established weapons or just more to the skill tree, because they're still pretty limited to maybe just a 3, 4, couple extra stuff. And the new perk system is pretty lackluster. I don't really see many players engaging with it. Now onto level design. Now, one core foundation that Fallen Order had was that basically you were landing a planet and you had to go to one end to grab a MacGuffin and come back. So there was a lot of backtracking and going in and out of different areas that you already go to, you know, kind of like the Castlevania series. Now again, I'm not going to spoil too much, but this story is a little bit more personal, so we are going to have a little bit more of a bulk of our story focus on one particular planet, and that's called Koboh. It's about the size of Kashyyyk and Dathomir into one, and what I do like about this is that, well, they really made you feel and see every single type of landscape of this planet. There's not a corner or crevice that you can't really go behind or anything. Now, it's not in like an open world sense, but the level design is pretty top notch when it comes to that. Now, what I will say is that they're extremely grand, and there's not too much in between with story elements and everything, so most of the time you're just going to be going through the level, and then you'll get to a story moment at the very end and then backtrack all the way. So while this hurts the pacing of the story, when it comes to the gameplay, I think it's perfectly fine. Now, when you think of Star Wars, you think of a big adventure traveling different planets, and with this one, unfortunately, we're really only traveling to 2 planets and a moon. So, like I said, the story is much more personal, so it's not like a big deal, honestly, in the grander scheme of things, but I would have liked a little bit more of those landscapes that we saw in Koboh, just transferring different planets. Like Coruscant is a great example of a perfect intro and a good condensed level that could have just been transferred into different parts. Like, there's so many sections of Kobo that I just thought that I was in a completely different planet and part of the galaxy. And then in the end, I was like, oh wait, no, I've been in here for the last like 12 hours, even to some larger extents. But that's also depending on how much time and engagement you put in the level and in a certain planet. But other than that, yeah, there is a lot of backtracking, but not too much on certain levels, which I do like. It's just more on going back to the planets. And then when it does coming to, you know, the platforming and jumping and cross and running the walls, it is good. Cal runs, I think, a little bit too fast, but just almost the right amount of speed when it comes to the platforming. I just wish that, you know, maybe he was a little bit slower so we can feel a little bit of the stuff, because he's running such a fast pace that the game just can't catch up with him. Oh, and also there's side missions in this cantina bar that are pretty fun and let you get to see different parts of the planet, which I kind of like. Now, let's talk about the performance, because it would just be just wrong for me to not consider or even talk about how the launch of this game went. And it's not even just the launch, but past that, because it's been almost a week and a half since then, and we've only gotten 2 patches, and the game isn't performing any better. Honestly, the first weekend was a complete nightmare, and I don't even know how reviewers were able to really give this title a 9 out of 10 with so many flaws. Because honestly, I would just think that those would just deduct from a title, even with all the awesome parts of it, like a story and combat. You know, these are things that I think we still should criticize, because, you know, while beauty is in the eye of the beholder, things like polishing, consistency, and quality control play a huge factor in one's experience and in gameplay. So to not factor that into, you know, a review or telling that to the audience, I feel is just unfair. And even for the devs to release this, it just doesn't seem right. Like, one can't fault the reviewer too, because this can easily be the developer just sending them a different code that even we got, and that's just unfair too to both the reviewer and us. Now, there was a day 1 patch which really didn't solve anything really. The game was still pretty inconsistent, and we basically went the entire weekend playing this, and that basically a lot of players already beat the game by then. And you can easily go on YouTube and watch some cutscenes, and you can still see some of the blemishes, clicking, glitches going on in the background. And like, look at this. When I was like jumping around, I was like, wait, what is happening in this animation? Am I flipping? Am I just like fast forwarding? I don't know. And these are just like animations that, again, a couple extra time, weeks, months, maybe 1 year of just, you know, polishing, testing really could have, you know, made this just feel a little bit more like a next-gen title and more realistic, because in the end of the day, this is kind of looking like a cartoon PS3 game at times. Now, that following Monday, they end up releasing a new update, and I would say this fixed for some people maybe 40 to 60% of some of the issues. On PC, it was still pretty inconsistent. Like, I don't know what's going on with Cal's face. It looked like he got, I don't even know what he got, because they even did updates for the Mantis, because just walking in, the game was just acting up, and that's just things that I'm like, I don't understand. The inconsistent frame rate, the everything. There's just, look at this shadowing that's kind of happening, this ghost effect. Like, I changed the settings on every single one of my TVs and monitors in the house, and I just could not figure out the right and nothing. It just wasn't working. And that at some times you'll be walking and the maps just glitches, or certain things will just load in and out. It's just super odd, because again, this is a PS5 title, and also a $70 game, even $90 if you get the deluxe version. So to receive the product with this much inconsistencies and just problems is just unacceptable. And look, just playing around, like hitting pots with a lightsaber, like, come on, this is just stuff that a QA tester would just spend like an entire day like doing, and like that's the whole job. And I feel like, well, what's happening? And I don't want to bash on any developer or any particular person that helped make this game, but when you're editing a movie, the best editors aren't noticed. You don't see their cuts or anything because they're just so perfect, and that's the same thing with a video game. You don't notice the blemishes or anything. The game feels so real and everything, but seeing things like clipping and just certain elements not work, or your hand going through certain stuff when it shouldn't be. It detracts you from the overall experience. But then again, what do I know? I have glasses, I'm blind. Like, this game runs apparently in a native 30 FPS, and then once you go and bump it up to the performance mode at 60, it just starts going crazy. And it's not like, oh, the quality mode works too. No, it's also pretty inconsistent too. And it's pretty odd because a majority of all games, 90% of them on the PlayStation 5, all run in a native 60 FPS. Even the first Fallen Order had an HD version that came out, and that one's even updated to 60. And the frame rate is all over the place, because while Cal might be consistent at 60, everything else is always flipping from 50 to 40, and sometimes I've even seen some elements hit to the low teens. And what's funny is that every single major boss fight for me had the worst and most offenses. Even traveling in in-game cutscenes and the ones that are, in the movie part are still super off. You'll just see frame rates just stutter and everything. Like right now, we're about to enter the planet. I'll just let you see because, again, while you might say like, this is normal for, video games, I always see things just pop in, textures come in and out and everything. This is just, I feel like, unacceptable. Like, I have no idea what the lighting's trying to do in this game. Even when you're walking with Cal, at least on the first version of the game, man, you can see the shadow, like, follow with you. Like, there's an extra sun or anything. Like, they know that you're basically going to be in buildings and caves and everything. So the lighting, obviously, is going to be pretty inconsistent. So they have, like, this extra light following behind you. And, yeah, it's kind of off and all over the place. But at least with some of the updates, it has kind of fixed itself. So even if you're watching this in the future and there's been plenty of updates, that's great for the title, but for the millions of players that played in the very beginning, they had unfortunately a pretty bad experience. But now, fortunately enough for you, young Padawan, you have a master that's willing to guide you through the true path, or at least the best experience. So while you're in play, just know that there is a new Game Plus mode, so don't worry, you can always go back and do a whole new gameplay mode, all that good stuff. Now, you've been hearing everything about the game being bigger, grander, side missions, and everything. I want you to focus on the main path at first. Now, you're just going to have to go back onto the map menu and keep on focusing on what is that path. But a lot of the forks on the road are going to be blocked with certain powers that you have to gain later down the line. So just be patient and know that by the time you know that it's almost the end, you can basically just go and do everything. Or you could just hold it at the very end, don't worry, you can still go back and play in that same build and just grow upon that. Go and find all the extra perks that you couldn't get, the extra cosmetics and all that, and just have a good fun time after that. Or just go and save that second playthrough for your new Game Plus mode. Now just know that all the things are blocked and you can't get through from the original path are still there, so you can't get to any of the green gates or etc. But you do have all the weapons and perks and skill points that you have from the previous one, so you can at least play in a stronger build than before, and maybe in a higher difficulty. Now, other thing is the customization. Now, I love this because even in your first playthrough, you can just change a bunch of stuff. These are transmods that you will see in a regular game that you can't get in New Game Plus, but you have in the regular campaign. Now, I still feel that a couple things are a little off about this. Now, a lot of things that you're looking at in the open world are being replaced with the cosmetics, and it is super heavy. I would have preferred maybe some extra perks or things to help build Cal to be stronger. Stuff like that would have been a little bit better to find out in the open world, but hey, the customizations are actually really awesome, and I like it. Now, I still would have been totally fine if I didn't see any of that show up in the cutscenes, and I just would have saw, this rough and scruffy Cal evolve and change throughout the story. Maybe he'll, become clean shave, and that could be a character trait or built for him, but whatever, this is totally fine, and honestly, this is pretty cool. I like the whole I can make him have a man bun and then go and make him look like a trucker dude or from the south easily fast, so this is pretty cool. And we even have wardrobe now, which is way better than those ponchos, and you can even customize the colors to some of them, so you can really make some unique outfits. And this is probably the only part where I will say that everyone's definitely going to have a totally different looking Cal. Maybe not the same strength one or built wise, but definitely each person's Cal is going to look unique to their own, which That is definitely awesome, man. Hey, this can only add to a real great foundation for a different Star Wars game, but let's continue with this. After you beat the game, you can travel back to any of the planets, and there are a few locations that were story-based that you can't go back to, but other than that, you can just go to a save point and go back and forth. And while there are some extra missions and secret boss fights, the world is a little less docile, so there's not that much to do after.
It's been a long 5 years.
So the story starts off 5 years after Jedi Fallen Order, where we left off with Cal talking with his team trying to figure out if they were going to either help out all the remaining Jedis in the galaxy, or if they were going to try to fight off the Empire. Now it looks like some turmoil hit the gang because they end up splitting up, and I think it's because Cal maybe had focused a little bit too much on the previous events and the overall, galactic threat, and didn't notice that, he still had to live his life and also worry about others in between. Now there is a book called Battle Scars that fills up a little bit of what happened in between this part of the story, but even in that, we're basically going to figure out as we play. So with that, let's start off the game. So Cal's still been messing with the Empire, but now it's getting even more extreme because more people are being affected by his actions. He gets stun locked by the events that happen in the intro, so he decides to go back and try to reunite the team. And then we're off on our new adventure as we start to reconnect and self-heal on our past. We arrive at this small town where we help the locals are being invaded by these raiders, and then we kick them out, and then we finally meet up with our old friends. The first few hours we're just going to be meeting up with the Mantis crew and learning different parts of the game and tutorial and all that good stuff throughout them, and we're even going to meet some new friends as well. Now when it comes to the presentation of the story, it is almost just like the original. The cutscenes are well shot in frame, and there's even a couple of long takes so you can really feel the full gravitas of some of the scenes. And while those are great cinematic upgrades to the title, they're not really used to anything other than just those particular scenes. And while this game does have some great action set pieces, none of them really come and compare to some of the set pieces like you getting into the walker in Kashyyyk in the first game, fighting some of the beasts in Dathomir, or even the intro train section in the first game. And I don't know why they chose to have a letterbox in the cutscenes, because that just wasn't something that was in the first game. And it just kind of feels that that's either trying to block some weird glitchy things that are happening in the background, or that they just filmed this completely separate from the actual game. Like, I would think this title would benefit tenfold if all the cutscenes were rendered in its in-game engine, and that there were like some quick time events, or that you can actually engage in some of the moments, because we've seen the frame rate dip in a lot of awesome set pieces and just action moments. It's kind of odd because you kind of feel like, wait, were those like actual quick time events that were taken out because of the last minute delay? Oh, and I would say the whole introduction to the High Republic era stuff is all background. Like, it does not serve any purpose at all. Like in the first game, when I was, hearing things about the Zephos and everything, I was like, okay, you know what? I can actually get down with this. Because if you know Star Wars lore, George Lucas created this whole extra, lore thing when it comes to the Force, and this kind of feels like that was connecting to it, even to a bigger extent, and that mixing with the previous movies, the prequels, the originals, it felt like it was a real awesome established Star Wars story, even though it was original. But with this title, I kind of feel that it was super confused on what it was trying to establish, because it was just trying to make now another original concept and story while forgetting the thing that made it, special. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate the work and writing in this game, because it still has a great foundation that's following from Fallen Order. It's just that, again, a lot of the things that made me like Fallen Order are just not here. And while I did like Cal's character arc and the places that they took him emotionally and mentally, the game and its level design really hurts the pacing of the story, which is just unfortunate because the actors here give some of their best performances, but I just can't say the same for the writing. Star Wars Jedi Survivor attempts to do what many sequels try, and that is to grow and build upon their established foundation and even try to make something new. So were they able to pull it off? I will say kind of. A lot of the charm and things that I liked of the original is just not here. I'm completely fine with new villains, added lore, friends and enemies. All these type of things are great, but there's just some core plot lines and threads that were left in Fallen Order that are just not talked about or even tackled in this game, which I feel just kind of hurt it because it really could have benefited if both universes could have clashed. Having the High Republic follow and search for the Zephos and all the clues of their temples and how it's all connected could have added to the overall Jedi lore, but even at that, the High Republic stuff doesn't even have any like great things to like bite off, or even like you could just read any of the books and comics and you'll get way more information than this 40-hour game, which doesn't make any sense because why spend so much time in a certain part of the universe if really we're not just going to get anything out of it? And a lot of the core things like its platforming and combat are basically a copy and paste of the original game. So there's not like anything new to bite off, and if anything this feels like a PS4 to 5 port. That's still not saying that this is a bad game. This is still one of the best Star Wars games, and I really can't wait to see what they do with Cal and the story, and I cannot wait for his next adventure. 6 greedy Jawas out of 10. Get down here, you damn ferret! Alright, I hope I didn't come off as salty, because maybe with some updates it can reach a 7, but please tell me down below what you think. Alright, so you made it to the end. Yo, I really appreciate you watching the video. It's been your boy Skater-V. Yo, like I said, I actually enjoyed playing this game, despite all the flaws that it had. But I still feel that this game could have, maybe 1 year in the oven, this game could have just been like almost a 10 out of 10, right? But this is still a pretty good foundation. Again, honestly, I think an extra delay would have totally benefited. Some of the things that you find, the customization stuff, could have maybe been replaced with some more added things to your build. Maybe fine-tuning and testing the combat and leveling system would have been better because, like I said, you basically got to play the game like 2.5 times to really get a full build. And that's just not fair to a majority of the fan base that really might only play this game like 1 time. And also to ignore all the things from the first one. Like, this is really the only reason why I was here was for the Zephos. And once we saw the old man, oh no, what happened to that old man? At least the Jawas are keeping me happy, man. I love these dudes. And what I hate is that to see them, it took forever to actually get something to get there, but whatever. Now, this is the only spoiler part of the story, but my ending boss fight was completely ruined by this glitch, and even though I still got to see how it was, I think it was pretty funny. So, hey, you know what? Enjoy this. I think it's a great alternative to ending, so it's not like a major spoiler, but wow, it is definitely something. And you know what? I still hate this dude's character arc, but here we go.
Daughter.
Mode, we know what it's like to grow up alone.
Please, listen to them, Papa!
All right.
When the Empire comes, will you be able to protect my little girl? I'm sorry, Father. I tried.